All right, welcome to the Creation to Cashflow podcast. On this podcast, we discuss strategies to maximize your creativity and help you achieve financial freedom. How's it going, Michelle?
It's going great. I just realized we're both wearing brown today. I'm proud of us for matching. We used to match on purpose and then we stopped.
I forgot about that. You're right. You would pretty much just let me know, wear this color when
Yeah,
we record. And I'm like, okay, sounds good.
which was like black or
Um,
white.
yeah, right. I forgot we stopped doing that. But anyway, maybe we should start again because we look great today.
Yeah, I like it. Also, I got a vampire facial yesterday, and Nick, you did not know what you did not know what that was. You're like, "What is that?"
Yeah, you were like, yeah, my face is like kind of bleeding uncontrollably. I don't know if we can record tomorrow. I was like, what? It's like, you got a what done?
Oh my god.
So anyway, sounds like a ton of fun. I can't wait. I should probably go get one myself.
Honestly, they're really good. It rebuilds collagen because it uses your own blood and plasma, and then microneedling using your own plasma. It's really good. It's not like getting like a toxin injected in you or anything. It's just rebuilding your own collagen. But yeah, no, I look a little scary without makeup on, even though I'm not supposed to have makeup on because it's only 20 hours after I got it done. Um, and by the way, it wasn't bleeding uncontrollably. It was just really red and like bloody because you can't wash your face until the next day. So I had blood like dried on me. It was a little gross if you're not into that kind of thing, but you should totally get one. Come to LA. I have a girl. Come get one.
Is that what we're doing? One podcast episode? We're sending Nick to LA to get a vampire facial. Who would have seen this coming? Someone let me know, like, go back in my past life and let me know when I'm sitting at my desk at my civil engineering job that I'm going to be going to LA to get my own blood and collagen inserted back into my facial skin.
Yep. Okay. I will go in the past and tell you.
I'm not sure what I would say. Anyway, we have a great podcast episode coming today that's really not related to any of that, but it was just important that we cover it. We could tie it in, I'm sure. We could always find a way. But today we're going to talk about constraints and something called the theory of constraints. So, first, it's also quite exciting. That sounded horribly boring when I said it, but it's actually like the coolest thing in the world. So, I'm going to define it just so that we can kind of get an understanding because it's something everyone is familiar with. So, the theory of constraints essentially, it really is just a way of thinking and solving problems where you look at something, right? When you're working towards a goal and you look at, well, what is the biggest constraint right now? And in terms of building a business and content creation and improving your mindset and all the things we usually talk about, we're all kind of doing this subconsciously. So if we start to get a better understanding of it, your life will improve just by listening to this episode. But essentially, the theory is like if you can just solve what is currently your biggest constraint, you will grow and you will get closer towards your goal, and then you will hit a new constraint. And then you need to now work on solving that because there's obviously always lots of constraints, right? Let's say you're a brand new content creator and you suck at editing and you're also getting low views and you have all of these problems. It's about figuring out like what is your biggest constraint right now. And in a case like that, it would probably be your lack of editing skills that leads to low views and it leads to other problems. So then if you go improve your editing skills, you might be like, all right, my views are getting a little better, but my retention rate is still bad. And now you need to figure out the next constraint, which is like, oh, I need to come up with better hooks. And I mean, it never really ends until you reach your goal. But it's such a great concept because for anyone who's building a business or working on their health or their fitness or anything, if you can start to get good at this, and we're going to really deep dive, oh my God, your life will just become so much simpler. And I think most people, including me, I do this all the time, but thinking of things this way helps. Everyone tries to solve too many problems at once and not just like what is currently the biggest thing holding me back. Like it's also, people also call it like bottlenecks. like what is your bottleneck, and that's why I feel like I keep doing this with my hands, because I'm just like I just realized I did that a bunch of times. I'm like making a bottle with my hands, because you're like, if your goal is to get to here and you're trying to get there and then you have a bottleneck issue, that's your constraint.
Yeah.
So anyway, first, I think we should probably just normalize this, because I meet a lot of people that have a lot of problems and they think that their goal is to make like every problem ever go away. But that never happens in life or in your business or in anything. Like the problems and constraints are always going to keep coming to the point where you're not going to be able to keep up with them. I feel like everyone's trying to get like a perfectly clean slate and be like, all my problems are solved. Have you ever had a moment where that has happened, Michelle, where you're like, I just solved every problem ever?
I have moments where I'm like, okay, everything is perfect. And then like 5 minutes later, a constraint comes. So it's one of those things. It's like, let's normalize it, like you said, because what we're chasing is something that's not realistic. And how boring would it be if there was never any problems to solve? I find so much satisfaction in like solving a puzzle. I think it's so fun. And I kind of like problem solving. Of course, it's not comfortable, but when we start to normalize it, we can then get excited and think outside the box and realize I'm not a victim to my problems. I am created to solve these problems.
Yeah, I really like that, because especially when you were like, yeah, 5 minutes later,
Yeah.
then you've got a new one, because that's how it goes. Like, I obviously I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but if anyone doesn't quite know me or like what are the things I do, I coach content creators in lots of different aspects, and they're all just looking to like fully systemize and automate everything in their business and just be like, oh wow, it's all perfect. I just make $10,000 a month now. And it's like that is not ever how it goes. You will always have something come up. If anything, things are usually there's like glaring problems, and you will always have these constraints to fix, like your business or your life or your health and wellness. Like it is always an uphill battle. You are always encountering problems and obstacles, but knowing how you can get around them and how it's just like your job is to just fix one constraint at a time and then move a little bit further, and then one constraint and move a little bit further. So I think what would be good is like breaking down another example. And to me, I don't know why, but this is going to be a great example. Running, like there's so many constraints when people want to run. Like I know someone right now who's working on running a half marathon that's coming up in May, and like she's not really a runner, so she's looking to become one. And like, so the end goal is to run 13.05 miles, I think it is. Let's just call it 13. You're going to have a lot of constraints there. First time she goes for a run, a mile in, she's going to get shin splints, right? That like terrible pain in the front of your shin where you're like, oh, this run is over officially. Time to walk. And that's her first constraint. And what you got to do to fix that constraint is like you need to strengthen the front of your lower leg, because everyone has very strong calves. No one knows like what a tibialis raise is, and it's just this movement you do with your foot that strengthens the front of your shin. And now boom, you fix that one constraint, and now she can run a mile and a half before her hips start to tighten up and her hips lock up. And it's like, okay, the next constraint, you need to start stretching your hips before you run. And now she can run 3 miles. And then the next constraint is her feet start to hurt. So now she's got to get better shoes. And when you start thinking of life and all of your problems in terms of like, let me just fix my biggest constraint right now, all of a sudden, she's going to go run 13 miles. And she's going to have constraints on that run too that she's not expecting. 5 miles in, she might get a cramp. Now she's like, okay, I got to hit the water station and like grab some electrolytes, and like one of her shoelaces is going to come undone and rip, and now she can't tie it. And she's like, I gotta now fix that constraint. I gotta tuck my shoelace into my heel and like try and stabilize my foot. Like you never know what these constraints are going to be, but they always come up. And the sad part is that sometimes people let just one of these constraints be the reason that they quit on the way to their goal.
I think that's a proven point of why you need to have a strong enough why, because you will run into these constraints, these obstacles. We all do. I mean, it's not something to avoid, it's just part of life. It's beautiful whenever you can solve it, it's fun. But I think if you don't have a strong enough why, like why does she want to run that? What is her goal? Like what is really motivating her to do that and push through all of these painful things? That is so important. You have to know your why. And then you can push through all these very difficult things. But I think, like you said, like some people want something and they're not willing to do what it takes to get that something because maybe they don't know why they want that something. And maybe that's a good place to start is like, okay, what is it that you really want and why?
That's a really good point. And sometimes people even they start with that why in mind and they forget about it. They just don't remind themselves often enough like why am I going through all this pain of like having to run 4 miles after a long ass workday when I definitely don't want to? And she might forget that like her actual big goal is to run the New York City Marathon, which is obviously not a half marathon, it's a full, so it's 26 miles and like that's her big thing, but you have to have done a certain amount of half marathons first to even apply. So it's like it's just a stepping stone and a goal among many. Like you could even at a higher level be like her constraint right now to getting to the New York City marathon that's 26 miles is she hasn't done enough half marathons. So like that's her current constraint. So you can zoom out and start to look at these at a higher level and you can also zoom in and be like, "Oh, the current constraint right now is like shin splints or my feet get sore and I don't have a good method of recovery, so I got to buy a foot massager." Like so this theory of constraints I love it and it's really powerful because no matter how far you zoom out you can find what your constraint is and it's your guide it gives you this north star to follow and be like okay here's what I need to work on right now. I can illustrate what this looks like in a coaching business as well because I think a lot of our listeners have coaching businesses or dreams of coaching other people. And I mean, having built a coaching business, like I certainly know this. And I wish I knew at a higher level, like, oh, it's just one constraint at a time and then your business is fine, even though you'll still have constraints. The first one is like, people don't know that you have a coaching business. If no one knows about it, no one's working with you. So you need to go make content about it. And then you need to get someone on a call. And getting calls booked is like most businesses, most small businesses, their biggest constraint is like, I don't get enough calls booked to make enough sales. So that's a big constraint. How do you solve that constraint? Well, you need to get really good at appointment setting or hire a good appointment setter. And then once you fix that, your next issue becomes the quality of calls booked. You're like, I'm getting 40 calls per week, but only 10 are a good fit. So now you need to play around with the content again. And now you solve the next constraint. And then you need to work on your sales skills. And then you need to work on your price and adding more team members and adding more leverage to your business. And it's just constraints. And I feel like life is so simple and your problems feel so small if you could just see that it's just one problem at a time before the next. But a lot of people will quit because they can't get enough calls booked.
Well, because it's overwhelming too, because then they're like, oh, the calls and the leads and thing. Like, that's the thing. That's why you're like, just focus on the one. Like, also, what's right in front of you is a great place to look at. What is the one thing you can take care of right now? Which is why a lot of times when I have a lot to do, but my place is like a wreck, I'm like, okay, what is one thing I can do because I'm overwhelmed with tasks? I'm going to clean and make a video of me cleaning. I do that all the time. It's like my constraint is my mind is cluttered and my home is cluttered. And yes, I need to go make all these videos, but like I know I won't be able to really be creative until I get my home organized. And then I can move on to the next thing.
That's such a good example. I did that this morning. I was in my room and I was like, I really want to play guitar right now because I feel a little bit like anxious. I was like, I need to just like decompress. And then I looked around and I was like, well, it's probably because my room looks like shit, actually. It's not anything else. I was like, that's my big constraint right now. So I cleaned my room, did a load of laundry, and then grabbed my guitar and I was like, okay, I feel so much better now. And I that leads me into our next topic, which is a lot of people will misidentify their constraint. And this is one where we can go super deep because, like, if you're not good at identifying your constraint and you're putting your effort and energy in the wrong place, it's going to lead to this buildup of frustration and you're not going to be able to actually solve your bottleneck. Like, it's like if you're, I don't know, imagine you're like a fly trapped in a bottle and you're trying to get out the top, it would be like you banging against the side wall being like, why can't I get out, when like you're supposed to go up, you know? So let's go through some examples of like common constraints that someone might misidentify. So first one, especially for content creators, the algorithm hates me.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, do you think the algorithm hates everyone?
No, the algorithm is usually not the problem.
Yeah, yeah, it's not to be the bearer of bad news, the breaker of bad news,
Bear.
bearer, same kind of, you guys get it. The algorithm probably doesn't hate you. That's probably not the constraint. The constraint is not, the algorithm is not a real thing. It
No.
is just like some formulas. I promise it is not out to get you. You're not being attacked. You're probably not shadow banned. Hear that one all the time. People are like, yeah, it's just tough because I'm shadow banned. I'm like, really? What is your average watch time? And they're like 2 seconds typically on my videos that are 30 seconds long. It's like, oh, you are not shadow banned. Your content is not good. Your hook is not getting people to watch your video. And when you misidentify that constraint, like if someone thinks the algorithm is out to get them and you complain that like the algorithm has me so stuck, you're going to really start to feel frustrated and you're going to want to quit because you've identified the wrong constraint.
Hmm. And I do want to say, obviously, this is not a black and white thing. Like, there are times that maybe somebody reported your video, or maybe something was triggered in your video, and yeah, maybe things slowed down. But the thing is, it's not the algorithm's fault. And it's not that you need to become a victim to the algorithm or a victim to the violation you got. Like, no, this happens to a lot of us creators. And so I think that we need to, like, yes, sometimes on very rare occasions, maybe there is some kind of thing happening behind the scenes, but the algorithm has no feelings. It is a neutral thing that is literally just trying to push content out to people that want to see that kind of content. And so, like Nick is saying, a lot of times it's us, like we're the problem, and what the decisions we're making are the problem that we need to fix. And it's not bad. It's just a thing that we have to do. It's just part of the constraint that we have to get over to get to the next part of our journey.
Exactly. It's not a bad thing. And sometimes we have to misidentify a constraint to figure out, like, oh, this is the wrong thing. I'm putting my effort in the wrong place. You're not going to get it right the first time, always. But it does help. Sometimes you got to zoom out a little bit and be like, what's really going on here? Am I the problem? Am I the drama? And sometimes you are. Yeah, sometimes you are. And sometimes you're not. Like you said, Michelle, really good. Like there are exceptions. There are exceptions. Maybe you did get shadow banned and your content is being suppressed. But like we got to go back. The constraint is now like, well, how did this happen? How do I avoid it? And how do I get over this?
Yep.
Another good one. I had someone say to me the other day, I feel like a lot of people say this to me. They're like, I just wish there were 25 hours in the day. But like we're looking at the wrong constraint here. Lack of time in the day is not the issue. There are lots of people out there that are working. They are making it work in these 24 hours. So we know it can be done. Like we know there's people out there that have trillions of dollars or billions, I guess. I don't think anyone has trillions, but there's people with billions of dollars. There's people that live on an island and are happy and have no phone and everything in between. Whatever success is to you, it is out there. We know it because there's people that have done this. Also, these people write books. You know, we can just the information is out there. The tutorials are out there. So time is not the issue. It is the mismanagement of time. And this is like a big, like a lot of people would argue and be like, yeah, but my scenario is different because I have 19 kids and they're all toddlers. You know, like whatever your crazy scenario is, like people always have a reason to be like, oh, but that's not my constraint. And it's like, it feels like it is. Because if you were to put your time in the right places and maybe you bring on 19 nannies, right? Because now you're putting your time in the right place, you build your business, and now you can fix all of your issues. Like there is always a way to zoom out and be like, what is my constraint? Because having kids is not a constraint. It's this amazing wonderful thing that should allow you to become a better version of yourself. So, sometimes people do like put blame on time, but there's always a way to manage our time better. There's always a way to squeeze another 20 minutes out of the day, or to cut out 5 minutes of distractions, or like there is always a way to manage time better.
Yeah, I mean, we all have the same 24 hours, every single one of us. And, I coach creators too. And one thing that I hear a lot, especially because I work with a lot of women and, most of them are moms, and they talk about the time. And then they're like, talking about maybe dinner time or watching something to decompress. And they're like, okay, but if I don't watch something at night, I will go insane. And then I'm like, okay, so what are you doing during the day that is making you feel so insane by the end of the day that you need to decompress and reverse bedtime revenge? Isn't that what it's called, or something like that?
Revenge bedtime procrastination.
That's what it was. Thank you. Um, it's like, okay, maybe, yes, TV is wasting your time if it's not adding value in your business. But if it's adding value because you feel so mentally like you just need a break, okay, what is it that's causing you to need a break? And then you had to backtrack. And it's almost like it never is, I don't have time, like, because again, we all have the same amount of time. Time is neutral. Time is moving whether we're doing something or not. We get 24 amazing hours every single day, and it's up to us to decide what are we doing with it. And sometimes it's going to take one little decision that you have to make, a lifestyle change you have to make, to then let you see, okay, what else can I change to where now I'm being the most efficient with the time that I'm given, so I can live the life that others are living that I really want to live.
Exactly. And we work with so many moms, so I don't want the moms to come at us and be like, my situation is different. But
Right.
sometimes, even if you could free up another 20 minutes in the day and put it towards someplace better, think about what that does over a year. And all of a sudden it's like you can be in a completely different place in a year if you find another 20 minutes that you can put towards work or self-care or whatever it is that you need. Like, everyone's goals are different. Not everyone's building a business, not everyone's a content creator. Whatever your goals are, using this theory of constraints to to not to victimize yourself, but to instead say, where is the problem and how can I fix it so I can just move on to the next problem.
I think that's the thing, Nick, is like the victimizing or shaming or putting guilt on these things. Like, I would just love to normalize that these are things we all experience and they're so neutral. There's no good or bad. Like, if you're doing something right now that is leading you to having constraints in your life and you're not thriving, okay, like, don't be so emotional about what you're doing. Just like take a step back and be like, okay, what am I doing? Okay, what could I do differently? Could I not bring my phone to bed with me? Could I wake up 20 minutes earlier? Could I not bring the phone in the bathroom with me? Because that's also disgusting and unsanitary. Like, what are these little things I could do to where I'm not putting blame on myself or feel like I'm limiting myself? Like, a lot of people are like, but I just like my freedom. I just like this. I just like that. And they feel like they're limiting themselves by changing something in their lives, but really it's going to allow you to free yourself up and free up your time. And it feels so limiting, but it's actually the opposite of that.
That's so perfectly said. That is worth rewinding a little bit to anyone who's like, I think I could use that one again. I would go back. I would definitely go back and listen to that one again. And here's another example too: not having enough money.
Mm.
Super common one. That might be a constraint, but we're misidentifying it. Just like time. It's like your issue is not that there's not enough time or that you don't have enough money. Your constraint is that you're not making enough money with the tasks that you do, with whatever, with where you work, where you put your time. So you need to zoom out a little bit and be like, what's actually my constraint? If I don't have enough money, I might have to approach my boss and ask for a raise. I might have to pick up an extra shift. I might have to work a little harder, work a little extra, because I mean, money allows us to do better things. Money allows you to free up time. It allows you to build skills. And most people, their issue is they think they don't have enough money to buy a course, hire a mentor, hire someone to do their laundry. But if you identify your constraints properly, you will likely find that by outsourcing some of these things, you will free yourself up to move on to your next constraint, which is probably skill based.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it so many times, but like meal delivery, having a housekeeper, to me, that isn't something I'm wasting money on. I'm not just like giving money away. I'm investing my money into something so I can get more of it. Not that money rules my life, but like, of course, I need it to do the things I want to do, to live the life I'm living. And so there are things that people hold on to, especially money, because they're afraid of losing it. But in reality, they're losing their thriving opportunities by holding on to money when they could invest in somebody to help them around the house, to help them pick up their kids from school and get back their time and their mental sanity. You know, it's an investment, and it's a mindset shift. I would say most people don't have that mindset or that perspective. It's just a perspective shift. And it's up to you to decide, like, do you want it to be a perspective shift, or you just want to keep thinking the way you're thinking? You know, I used to think a lot of these things, but I have a whole different mindset now. Like it has shifted. So if it's possible for me, I know it's possible for you.
Yeah, it's this is all normal and this is all how it's supposed to happen. Like you're not the only one experiencing constant like difficulties and feelings of chaos and like feeling like you're behind. You are not the only one experiencing all of this. Everyone feels this way at all levels. And like blaming that and being the victim of it does not move you towards your goals. But zooming out and figuring out like what are your current excuses for things not working? And then boom, I promise you can find your constraint if you zoom out and backtrack a little bit. Like to me, I used to think that like in my coaching business when I was brand new, like I used to I used to think up all the reasons why things aren't working and I'm like, "Oh, I just need like to make better content." And I'm like, actually I'm not getting calls booked because my landing page is terrible." And I would just blame my content and get frustrated and be like, I'm averaging 45 views on my videos when I talk about my products. Like, what is going on here? Why is this so difficult? And getting frustrated and thinking that, like, I'm the only one experiencing this. And then you see someone else who's succeeding and you get more frustrated because now you're comparing yourself to them. What if I just look at my excuse and I'm like, my content's not good enough? But then I zoom out, maybe I bring on some help and someone audits my landing page and they're like, no one's signing up to this, dude. Like, you look, you got a typo here, you got a this, your form doesn't even work. And I'm like, oh no. And I've misidentified the constraint and I've frustrated myself. So anyway, I like to ask people that, like, why do you think things aren't working right now? And people will come up with these excuses. And it's easy for someone on the outside to just look and be like, don't you see what's happening here? But it's very hard for like us, the individual, because I am not perfect at this. I love the theory of constraints because it constantly challenges my way of thinking. I misidentify most of my constraints. I get it wrong 90% of the time, but when I look at someone else, it's very easy to find their constraints. And I'm like, don't you see this? And they're like, no. Like, for example, we were just talking to someone who was like, I've made 20 videos and I'm not making any money. I'm like, of course not. And she's like, my videos must be terrible. And I'm like, they're not terrible. I've seen your videos before. You haven't made enough videos. You're identifying the wrong constraint. It is quantity, not quality. So it's easier for someone else to look at these things and help you find them. So I don't know. That leads me to this. Just like, don't be afraid to ask for help or hire help. It is so useful because we get so concerned. Like that running example was very easy and simple, but like you don't really know. Like in the girl in the example who's like runs 4 miles and then her hips are too tight for her to keep going. Like she might not know that that's actually like a low back issue. Like you might need to talk to a running expert and be like, why do my hips do this? I've been stretching them beforehand. And that person might be like, actually, it's a low back issue that's leading to this. And it's like, it might be so easy for them to see, while meanwhile you're working at the wrong thing.
Yeah, getting an outside perspective is huge. And also, please misidentify your constraints because that will lead you to identifying the right ones. But if you're just like blaming it on time or money, which are so generic, of course you're not going to find the true constraint. Therefore, you won't find the true way to get over it. And so, yeah, I think you should definitely write down all of the things. I think writing down is so helpful for me because I'm like, why am I overwhelmed? Why am I not getting anything posted? Which, by the way, I am not perfect either. I think everybody knows that. But like, still, we're not perfect. Nobody is. And so, it's like writing down all the things that might be generic, but then you can break those down into, okay, time, okay, what am I doing at night with my time? Or what am I doing super early in the morning with my time? How much am I sleeping? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I sleeping too much? Like, there are questions you need to start asking yourself and just write down all of the things, date it, and then do this every couple weeks, every month, and then just see like what was your constraint back then. And you'll start to kind of see how you're wired and your patterns of thinking are. And you see it right in front of you too. It's amazing. But you've got to identify something and not just think that this is how your life is and that you can't change it because you can change it. Trust me, I've done it. I've changed my entire reality before. And so, yeah.
I did this. Perfect example. I want to give an example of like me misidentifying constraints, because like we say it all the time. We're like, we're not perfect. We're just trying to tell you guys like what helps us. So like here's a constraint. And Jose from our last episode, oh my god, the last episode was so good. If you have not listened to it, you have to go. I was talking with Jose. We probably talked for 2 hours. Um, and I was like, because Jose is great at helping me figure out like when I'm misidentifying constraints, he gets me very well, even though I haven't known him all that long. And I was like, Jose, I am so called to go live in Puerto Rico. I'm I think about it every day, but it's a cash only market, and like to buy a property there is like you may have to pay the whole thing in cash. And I'm not that far, but I'm not that close to being able to do that. Like to be able to comfortably be like, oh, here's $150,000. Like, I don't know if I could just do that right now. And I'm like, Jose, like, but I'm so called there. I'm like, what do I do? And I told him, I was like, because I don't want to just go rent and flush money down the drain when like that money I could have saved that and put it towards actually like purchasing something. And he was like, Nick, and he gave me a look, and I was like, just tell me, what is it, Jose? And he was like, what you need to do is you have to go down there and rent. If you're being called there, you got to put yourself in that environment. You got to go figure out the lay of the land. You got to go soak all of that up, because you might find out in 4 months that you actually don't even want to live there, or you don't want to buy a place and you just want to go often. You just want to spend the winters there because you don't like the Jersey winters. And he just like, it was like instant. He was like, dude, here's what you got to do. And I was like, why did that sound so obvious? Like, why was I thinking the wrong thing? Why did I totally misidentify this? And we talked about it for a while. Obviously, it goes a little bit deeper than that, but sometimes you need that other person to just be like, you don't see that this is your constraint. And I'm like looking the wrong way. I'm looking over here. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, we're over here. It's right here. And I'm like, oh. So anyway, I wanted to share that so everyone sees like, just because we're talking about this theory of constraints doesn't mean that it's easy. It's quite challenging. Like, I like it because it challenges my way of thinking, and it forces me to often have conversations with people and be like, I feel like I should do this. And they'll be like, you're kidding, right? And I'm like, oh, you have a better idea? Should I be doing something else? So ask for help, talk to other people, hire mentors, hire coaches, ask us questions on creationtocashflow.com. Let us identify your constraints. That would be so fun. We love when we get like questions and voice notes from you guys. So go to creationtocashflow.com. Tell us what you think your constraint is, what you're struggling with. We'll do a whole episode on it if we can.
I love that. Yes.
Anything else, Michelle, that we need to like really hit on here with this?
Not that I can think of.
Fix your constraints, identify the next, fix it, identify the next, fix it, identify the next. Get help in identifying these constraints. You got to talk to people. It is so eye opening sometimes. Like, I felt so silly. I was like, yeah, I can't just buy a place. Like, I need to go spend a lot more time down there and figure out where is the place? What is my price point? What am I looking for? What kind of town? What kind of vibe? And sometimes you just need someone to be like, someone to just like shake you by the shoulders and be like, what the hell is going on in your brain?
Yeah, because Nick, it wouldn't be flushing money down for renting. Are you kidding me? Like when we moved to LA, it was for 3 months for the exact same thing. I love that Jose said that because literally, I was like, I don't know what area of Los Angeles I'm supposed to be in. I don't know where I want to buy a house. Like, I don't know anything. I don't know what, like, the whole city. And it's like, of course, I didn't want to rent. But now I'm like, okay, well, now I have investments where my money is there instead of in the housing market at the moment. And like, there's other ways to still make money. You know what I mean? I live with, I mean, I live in a building with a lot of millionaires, and we all rent, and they're even like, oh, we don't want to buy a house, we want to rent, even though we pay, like, some of them pay over $10,000 to live here a month. And they're like, because it's making us way more money to have that money in our investments and stocks and bonds and all the things rather than like in a house. And so it's all about like, if you do rent, maybe you meet somebody and maybe that person will lead, you just don't know. And you can't let $150,000 like hold you up when you don't even know where you want to live. I just love that. That was such good advice. He's amazing. If you guys have not heard that episode from last week, please go listen to it. Like, your life will be changed.
Yeah, I'm like, how do we get Jose every other week? Because
Right?
he is so good and so wise. Can't I will say it a fourth time. You guys have to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. Um, and honestly, that's the theory of constraints. It is just a way of thinking, right? It is not meant to make you feel bad. It's meant to make you feel good and figure out like, am I putting eggs in the wrong basket right now? Because I promise you are.
Yeah, and sorry, I meant to tie in my PRP microneedling vampire facial too. We almost had a constraint where yesterday I was like, Nick, I don't know if we can do the podcast because I look like somebody took all the skin off my face. Like, this is terrifying. And so, what did I do? I don't know if you're watching the video version of this, guys, but I found this like filter extension for the platform that we record on. I was like, okay, I'll just like put a little bit of foundation on my face to cover the redness. And I found my way out of the constraint that I was having, which was, oh my God, if somebody sees a short form clip on social media, that is the first impression. I'm going to look dead and it's going to look scary. So I don't know what to do. So, anyway, that's just like a small example, too. There's day to day constraints that we go through. So, start exercising with your day to day. Don't get overwhelmed with, like, oh my God, I want to be in Puerto Rico right now, living there. Like, don't think so big yet if you're not used to doing this and problem solving. Just think small. What is a small excuse? Why aren't you going to the doctor? Why have you not made that dentist appointment? Why have you not gone to the DMV? What is a little bitty constraint that you can practice getting over today?
So good. So good. I have to book a dentist appointment. I'm so glad you said that.
Oh my gosh.
But it's true. And I can't emphasize enough, like, if you listen to this podcast and you love it, I mean, sure, go leave us like a rating and a review. That really goes a long way. That really helps us out. We've been doing this for over a year. And I mean, we do it for you guys, but tell us your constraints, tell us your problems, tell us your things you want to hear more about. You can just go to creationtocashflow.com and you can leave us a voice note or just type up something. But the voice notes are way cooler because we can play it on here. So anyway, I think that's all we got for you guys today. So if you're looking for more ways to monetize your creativity and find more freedom in your life, subscribe so you do not miss our next episode. You can go find me on Instagram and TikTok at Get Ahead with Nick, and you can find Michelle at Michelle JH, Michelle with two L's, four E's, JH. And we will see you next time.